Hello, my friends. Our topic is a very important one in astrology, the moon's north node and south node. And there's something going on with the nodes that's rarely discussed, which is that there are two very different opinions about what the nodes mean. There's the opinion of Vedic astrologers. Vedic astrologers rely very heavily on the north node and south node in their interpretations, and of course they have meanings for them. In modern Western astrology, there's a branch of modern Western astrology known as Evolutionary Astrology. And in Evolutionary Astrology, they put a lot of emphasis also on the nodes and come up with very different meanings for the nodes. Oh my gosh, you have these two large groups of astrologers, very confident, relying very strongly on the meanings of nodes and giving very different meanings. Wow. How can that be? Some people will say, well, within, a certain language of astrology, that language works differently. Well, why? You can just arbitrarily assign what's going on here. Assign whatever meanings you want. We're going to explore the meanings of the North Node and South Node according to Vedic astrology, according to Evolutionary Astrology. One or two other ideas about the meanings. And then we're going to look at the research of databases and how that was applied to actual charts and come up with a new meaning for the nodes. But this new meaning ends up having some things in common with Vedic and some things in common with evolutionary. It was not our attempt to make a compromise. The attempt was to use modern research methods to find out what's really going on with the nodes. And then we found out, oh my gosh, there's some truth to the Vedic, there's some truth to the evolutionary, and there's something else going on that makes sense of all of this. So I'm going to take you on this journey, step by step, to this discovery of what the nodes actually mean, elevating astrology to a modern evidence-based practice. And the first thing that we're going to look at, even before we look at what the Vedic astrologers say and the evolutionary astrologers say, and then what the data says, and then how it all fits together, is which node are we going to use, the mean node or the true node? As you may know, there are two calculations for the nodes. And what we have found by analyzing the astronomy of what the nodes are, the actual history, which ends up being a lot different from what a lot of people say the history is, and applying all these ideas and doing new research where we use spherical trigonometry to measure where the moon is headed and what's going on, all of this stuff. I've made 4 or 5 hours of videos about this. I'm not going to summarize or get into all that here. I just want to tell you the conclusion. And the conclusion is the true node is correct and the mean node is incorrect. Now I know that's strong words there and might be upsetting to some people, but in the description for this video, I have the links to those and you can watch all of that. It gets quite technical and detailed on why the true node is correct and the mean node is incorrect. I know this is controversial. I know people have strong arguments either way, but if you're going to make a comment on this video about that, please watch those other videos first, because there's a lot of information in there and a lot of information that's not commonly known about the nodes. Okay, and you can pause this slide if you want to, and you can read some of the things I wrote here. This is just a quick summary of a few key points. I don't really want to get into it because it's all described in detail in these other videos. Let's get on to what we want to understand, what the nodes mean for us astrologers, and we will be using the true nodes. Okay, number one. What do the nodes mean in Vedic astrology? Here's an interpretation from a website. I give the website address. It's a standard interpretation. I think if you're a Vedic astrologer, you will agree that this is a good interpretation. This is what the nodes mean. And I will be using the Vedic term for North Node, which is Rahu, and the Vedic term for the South Node, which is Ketu. Some modern Western astrologers also use this terminology because they're nice, crisp, short, clear, useful terms instead of always saying moon's north node, we can just say Rahu. And it's just quick, clear, precise. So I will use these terms interchangeably, sometimes calling it moon's north node, sometimes calling it Rahu, and so on. Okay, Rahu. Now it says here, listen to this first thing. Rahu is a planet. What? To a Western astrologer? Okay, they're already confused. Rahu is not a planet. The North Node is not a planet. It's a point in space. It's the intersection of two great circles, blah, 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 blah. In Vedic astrology, this can sound weird, but they look at Rahu just like a planet. They say there are 9 planets, or grahas, the navagrahas. Nav means 9. The 9 celestial bodies, which are the sun and moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, that's 5, so 2 plus 5. And the other 2, Rahu and Ketu. They treat them just like planets. Okay, they're not planets, but they refer to them as planets. That's how much importance they put on them. Every single chart they do, these are the 9 points they use. With every single chart done by thousands and thousands of astrologers, either they're all delusional or there's got to be some truth to this. Okay, so Rahu is a planet which creates illusion. Whoa, illusion. Okay, if you're a Western astrologer and the North Node creates illusion, no, Neptune creates illusion. It's like, okay, just get used to this. It's a whole different interpretation. Creates illusion and has desires of materialistic gain. Whoa, okay, just get used to it. This is according to Vedic astrology. Creates illusion, desire for materialistic gain. In present scenario, Rahu provides fame and also represents IT sectors. Data, computing, analysis, technology. Why fame? Well, they're going all over the place here. Wait. It's an illusion, it's materialistic gain, it's fame, it's IT. What all of these have in common? There's a thread, even though these things seem very different. The thread is this craving, hungry nature. They sometimes talk of Rahu as the dragon's head with no body, just like hunger, feed me, feed me, feed me. This unquenchable thirst, endless desire. It's illusory. It wants materialistic. Now, when they say materialistic, you can just think of it as concrete in the real world. So the Rahu is this hungry, dynamic, moving, always seeking something more marvelous, fast-paced, exciting. That's where IT, our cell phones, our digital stuff, our movies, our music, the moving, the dynamism, the hunger. And it's never satisfied. Always wants more, always wants more. A new sound, a new breakthrough. So it's a craving nature, wants to consume every materialistic thing of the world. Now again, the word materialistic here means more about just being in the world, in your senses. It doesn't mean just that you want money, but you want sensory experience. That's what they're really getting at here. It never gets satisfied with what he has, constantly craving. The material world will never fulfill you, as this is the underlying philosophy. Rahu always seeks for a different opportunity, always something new, always hungry. Oh, I want this. Oh, I want a better job. I want a bigger house. I want a nicer car. I want people cheating on their spouses. Oh, I want a prettier person. Always hungry, dynamic, moving. Good things come out of this, as well as obviously bad things. There's progress, there's development, there's excitement. This is Rahu. Now, what is Ketu? Ketu is a planet which detaches from the material world and leads toward the path of spirituality. So Rahu is this hungry head with no body, just give me, experience. And Ketu's sitting back far away from the manifest world and of all of our sensory desires, way back, seeking something outside the material. moksha, means spiritual liberation, or you could use the word salvation if you prefer. So this is the understanding in Vedic astrology. Now contrast this understanding with evolutionary astrology, modern Western form of astrology, which is extremely popular and has influenced many other modern Western astrologers who are not specifically evolutionary. And this is from Stephen Forrest's website. Stephen Forrest is one of the most respected astrologers in modern Western astrology, and he is an evolutionary astrologer, and his influence reaches far and wide, and he's very well respected. So let's see what Stephen says. The North Node is where the answers lie. Oh my God! What? I thought answers? According to Vedic, this is where you're lost in Maya and delusion and illusion and just hungry senses. This is where the answers are? Whoa. Okay, very different opinion. Like the North Star, it guides us across life's dark oceans, revealing the fresh path of energy, healing, breakthrough, and evolution. Oh my God. Very different. We're going to find out by using an evidence-based system what the nodes mean, and amazingly, there's elements of truth and some distortion in both of these interpretations. So let's just take it one step at a time. We've talked about Vedic meaning of Rahu and Ketu. Now this is the evolutionary. And like I said, you don't hear much about interfacing these two completely different interpretations because people just live in their own world of astrology. They're Vedic or they're evolutionary. And if they look at what each other's doing, they go, I don't know what's going on over there. I'm just going to stick with mine. I can't relate to that. Maybe in some other context, it's like a mystery. Well, we're going to solve the mystery here. What's going on in this series of videos? So an understanding of the North Node is perhaps the single most precious catalyst that astrology can provide for anyone. It's the answer, showing you where your growth direction and evolution are. Now, what is the South Node? The South Node represents unresolved karma that has ripened. That means that it's time to deal with it. Okay, so the South Node, according to Vedic astrology, is where you get moksha, liberation, and just the opposite in evolutionary. It's not liberation, it's old stuff that you're done with. It's ready to just you're done with it, man. Just get rid of don't backslide back into your South Node. Very different meaning. So, to continue with this interpretation, the good news is that you are ready. So you're ready to deal with this karma that has ripened. Meanwhile, the North Node suggests a powerful, effective antidote to those old, outdated South Node patterns. It's like an arrow in your chart. You're coming from Ketu and you're heading to Rahu. According to Vedic astrologers, as you head into Rahu, you're just endless hunger, never satisfied. And you need some of that Ketu. If you want to really evolve, you need to get into spiritual liberation and go back to Ketu. So completely different meaning. Okay, last sentence here. Here's where it gets sticky. That South Node behavior comes up pretty much automatically, while reaching the North Node always takes serious effort. Okay, so it might be a little difficult to hold these two different ideas of Rahu and Ketu because they're so different. So, you can re-listen to the beginning of this video to get again into the flow of what Rahu and Ketu mean in Vedic and what they mean in evolutionary. Two different images are given to us, two different concepts and visualizations of what the nodes are. Now here's a third idea. And we're going to find some truth to this one. There's actually elements of truth and distortion in these meanings, but this is interesting. Reinhold Ebertin, who developed a system of astrology called cosmobiology. Here's a quote from a book. I give the name of the book here and the author. And here's what the author of this book says. Reinhold Ebertin suggests that the moon's nodes rule the subconscious memory and the astral body, which apparently hold the memories of past lives with their unfulfilled yearnings and continued emotional problems. This is somewhat similar to the evolutionary, where the south node is old karma. It also agrees a little bit with the Vedic in that this force of the nodes is a deep force that could come even from past lives. Ebertin also sees the nodes as representing association and links with other people. And in fact, in Ebertin's classic book of interpretations, it's a book called The Combination of Stellar Influences. It's a classic book. He repeatedly refers to associations with other people when interpreting the nodes. So he's introducing a third idea that the nodes have to do with people coming together, meeting someone, associations. Now, Ebertin doesn't distinguish that much between Rahu and Ketu, because in a lot of his work he's focusing on hard aspects and midpoint structures, and because Rahu and Ketu are exactly opposite each other, an aspect to one is also an aspect to the other. So he's not making this big dynamic arrow from Ketu to Rahu, or in the case of Vedic astrology, that Rahu is your immersion in the physical world where you can get lost in the materialism, or retreat back to Ketu, another kind of a dynamism. With Ebertin, for the most part, he tends to blend them together. I'm not saying in every single thing he writes, but that's a tendency. Main point I want to make here is this idea of associations and relationships. And what we're going to find out, a little preview here, we're going to find out that there's some truth to that. There's some truth to all three of these interpretations. Okay, now, I'm going to tell you what Rahu and Ketu mean in vibrational astrology, and then I'm going to show you little bits of the research and some conclusions from it, and some examples of charts from that research showing how we see this in actual charts. But let me just tell you straight away what Rahu and Ketu mean. This is the meaning of Rahu and Ketu according to vibrational astrology, and this is what I personally agree with. I do not completely agree with the Vedic. I do not completely agree with the evolutionary, and I do not completely agree with Reinhold Ebertin, and they do not agree with each other. So here's a fourth interpretation. So we have the Vedic, we have evolutionary astrology, we have Reinhold Ebertin and cosmobiology, and now I'm going to give you the fourth one, which is the one that I think is the correct one. What is the South Node? Let me start with the South Node, because the meaning I'm going to give you does have this arrow, just like you have in evolutionary, from Ketu to Rahu. So that's the part we really agree with evolutionary. They got this right. There's a flow. Let me say that again. There's a flow from Ketu to Rahu. We agree very much. We have a slightly different idea on what that flow is. Instead of it being from unresolved karma, that fruit that has ripened and ready to basically be done with and move on to your path in life, which is Rahu, it's a little more finely nuanced than that. But there is this flow, and it's like a river. So just imagine a river flowing. Now, the South Node is the source of a river high in the mountains. It's so much like this. This image is so much like what the nodes do. So imagine, if you have a river And imagine that river empties out into the ocean. Well, that river begins somewhere. And some rivers begin high in the mountains. That is the way to think of Rahu and Ketu. So Ketu is like the source of the river high in the mountains. The north node, Rahu, is like the rushing force of the river as it heads out to the ocean. The north node is like a torrent of energy. Imagine the river starting high in the mountains. Maybe it's from melted snow. Maybe there's spring water coming out of the earth. Maybe a combination of four. But this little trickle of water. And then as all the rain from the hillsides all come down into this river, it gains more and more force. That's what's happening with Rahu and Ketu. That river becomes a powerful stream carried by gravity. There's no stopping it. It's like a torrent of energy that has emotional depth and power. We're talking about the moon here, the moon's nodes. The moon is the past. It's our memories, it's our moods, it's our childhood. It's our access to ancestral memories. You could think of it as past lives if you want to. It's like you're unconscious, this huge amount of power, psychic energy, mental energy, emotional energy, coming together in a stream, pulling it all together and flowing down. So it has tremendous emotional depth and power. And then it finally, we'll imagine this river emptying out into the ocean, reaching the ocean, and on its way from Ketu to Rahu, you can use that that river for irrigation, for drinking, possibly electrical power. If there's like a waterfall, people often would put mills, to ground up corn or wheat or whatever. So this force can be used as it goes down. So the south, what is the south node? Is it, as they say in evolutionary astrology, unresolved karma? No. Okay. It's a little bit closer to what's being said in Vedic astrology. The south node is a place where we can go for inspiration and to remember a core strength that we have. Now, I'm going to explain why evolutionary astrology comes up with a different meaning for the nodes. And within the context of how they're thinking about things like zodiac signs and stuff, a lot of it actually makes sense. We're going to have to take this one piece at a time, okay? And I'll explain what's going on. But first thing is that the south node is a place we go for inspiration and to remember a core strength. It's the beginning of that river. Without that beginning, there's no river. It's where it's all coming from. It's the source. It's, you could say, sacred in a sense. It's the source. It's something that deserves even reverence. So here we get a little bit of feeling of the Vedic. And I will explain why this was missed in evolutionary and how they did pick up problems that can happen with Ketu. So here's the point, and this starts showing some of the truth in the evolutionary astrology. Okay, Ketu is the source of the river from which all this, you could say, water of life is springing. But what the nodes are showing is how we engage with the world. This is where the Vedic goes wrong. They're saying that, Rahu is materialistic and, just hungry. Now, the evolutionary has this a little bit better. Is the idea of the nodes is that we have incarnated for a positive reason. We have taken on specific qualities for a purpose, and it's beautiful. The material world is not just Maya delusion and a trap and something that's going to wrap you up in its web and keep you stuck. That can happen. But it's also beautiful. You can think of it like this. According to modern physics, according to Einstein, E equals mc squared. What is this matter that we're so afraid of, that's so illusory and keeps us starving for it? It's energy. You can convert matter to energy. So spirit, energy, force, that's what matter is. It's a condensation of energy. And in fact, matter is over 99% space. When you clap your hands, you're actually, the protons and neutrons are not actually banging against each other. It's force fields. So matter, which is similar to mater or mother, is this beautiful manifestation of something that's vague and amorphous, energy. And what the nodes are showing is how you become engaged in life and what your purpose and meaning in life is. So evolutionary astrology has it right. That North Node is your path to evolution. However, there's something missing in evolutionary astrology, is the evolutionary astrology gives you this feeling like, oh, that South Node, just be done with it, just fix it, clear it, and get on with where you need to go. Actually, you need to remember an essential quality of that South Node. You need to, you might say, keep it in your heart. And the South Node is where we go for a retreat. Sometimes we need a break, we need rest, we need a vacation or holiday, whatever you want to call it. We need to go to the church or the temple. We need to walk in the woods. We need to disengage. That disengaging and coming into our real truth, that's like going back to the head of the waters and giving reverence and remembering why we're engaged in the world. And there's the truth to the Vedic astrology. If you engage with the world and you pursue it and you pursue it and you don't keep in mind the beauty and wisdom of your South Node, you will get lost in it. You will get lost in it. And later on I will talk about why the importance of keeping the South Node in your heart is overlooked in evolutionary astrology. It's actually almost impossible for them to have found it. I'll explain all that. But right now, I want you to understand that Ketu is the source of the river. It's where the water of life begins. And there's a truth there. It's like a retreat, a place to hold in our hearts and remember. But it's not a place for us to become actively engaged. It's like we're given the gift at Ketu and we must descend into the world. We need to build houses, grow gardens, become doctors, become nurses, become whatever it is we do. Artists, musicians, scientists. We come into the world to do something, to become something, to take a form and to contribute. Rahu is not a dragon's head that can never be satisfied. That is a negative possibility of Rahu if you forget in your heart the wisdom and truth and beauty of Ketu. So the evolutionary astrologers are correct. Go out, follow your North Node. The Vedic astrologers are correct that if you follow that North Node and you forget about the South Node, you run the risk of becoming immersed in endless searches for fulfillment and never finding it in the world of sensory experience. Okay, so again, Ketu is the source of the river. It's where we go for a retreat. It's where we go for our deepest wisdom and understanding. And we're going to look at charts. This is all very abstract. But in the next videos in this series, we're going to look at charts. We're going to see what that means. And we're going to see what it means to hold in your heart the essence of, for example, a zodiac sign or a conjunction with a planet. Okay. So we will continue with this slide in the next video in this series on what Rahu and Ketu actually mean. I think you're beginning to see 3 visualizations of Rahu and Ketu. You can imagine the Vedic way of understanding it. You can imagine the evolutionary way of understanding it. You can understand the vibrational astrology way of understanding it. 3 different visualizations. And again, if you're jumping between these things and you can't remember them, to latch on to the vibrational astrology, just remember river. That's key word. Think river. Oh yeah, river. Ketu is the source of the river, and Rahu is the rushing of that river downstream into the ocean. That can help you remember the whole concept of what's going on. Okay, we'll stop here. We'll pick up with this. We'll get into more detail of understanding Rahu and Ketu, and we'll start seeing how it operates in people's charts and how we use modern evidence-based practices to figure these things out. Okay, thank you very much for listening, my friends. God bless. Namaste. Hope to see you in part 2 in this series.